Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending the Urban League of Portland's Forum for Marion County State Senate District 11. My name is Joy Elise. My pronouns are she and her, and I am the president and executive director of Imagine Black, and I'm honored to be tonight's moderator. Before we get started, I want to thank our community partners, Muslim Education Trust, in co-hosting tonight's forum, as well as several others that will be happening this month. Without their efforts and support, tonight's event would not have been possible. Thank you. I also want to highlight the importance of voting. Voting is not just an every 4-year event, y'all. Every year there are local elections, and they're just as important as our presidential and other federal elections. I want to remind you that the deadline to register to vote is October 18th. And I also want to remind you that democracy only works when we participate. So get registered if you're not, and get out the vote. So tonight, we will be featuring 2 candidates running for Marion County State Senate District 11. We have Senator Kim Thatcher and candidate Richard Walsh. These candidates are here to highlight their campaign proposals and answer community questions as potential future District 11 senators. Although we hope tonight's forum will be an exciting and informative event, we also want it to be an orderly one. So here are a few ground rules for the candidates, and I'll share them now. So number 1, if you can, please remain muted if you're not answering a question. This is going to be super important for audio issues as well as video focus. Please don't forget this. Number 2 is that each candidate will have 3 minutes for their opening statement. We will ask you to deliver your opening statements in alphabetical order. So we'll start with Senator Kim Thatcher, followed by candidate Richard Walsh. Number 3, when questions are asked, each candidate will have 3 minutes to respond with no rebuttals. There will be 6 to 8 questions tonight, depending on time. The broad topic areas for questions will fall under the topics of criminal justice systems, issue of mental health, affordable housing, and climate change. We will begin in reverse alphabetical order with the questions, starting with candidate Richard Walsh, followed by Senator Kim Thatcher, and we'll alternate for each question after that. At the very end, after all of the questions are complete, each candidate will have 3 minutes to deliver their closing statement. We will ask that you deliver your closing statements in alphabetical order. So we'll start with Senator Kim Thatcher and then followed by candidate Richard Walsh. And then my last rule for you all, I promise we're almost done. If you can please just be courteous and conscious of time with your fellow candidates. Throughout this forum, when speaking, if you're within 30 seconds of your allotted time, the Urban League staff will send you a notification. If you go over time, we will send a chat to all of us, to the whole group, letting them know that your time is up, and then followed by mute. So we're taking our time very seriously. We have quite a lot of questions to get through, and I'm just really appreciative of your time. So before we dive in, just wanted to check in with both candidates around those rules. Are we aligned? Sounds great. Okay, so we're going to begin with some opening statements. We're going to start in alphabetical order. So we're going to start with Senator Thatcher first. You have 3 minutes and your time starts now.
Thank you. I have to say it's highly unusual for me to be alphabetically first, being in a T, but cool. I'll take it. I am Kim Thatcher. I live in Kaiser. I've lived here for 31 years and raised my family here, been an Oregonian most of my life. Love this state. I have lived in a lot of other states growing up, and so I can speak to the fact that this is a very special place, and I want things to be better than they are right now, because I think a lot of things are kind of going sideways that shouldn't be. I would like to see our economy do better. I would like to see be able to make ends meet. I want to make sure that kids are getting the best education. I want to make sure that people can walk around their neighborhood and not feel like they're in danger all the time. So with the homelessness spreading down to it's not just a Portland issue, it is all over the state, and Salem is hard hit by it as well. and mental health and addiction issues are underlying a lot of it. The affordability of our inflation and all the things that tie into that are also part of it. But it's been an accumulation, I think, of things that have just kind of scratched at the surface and are making a raw wound in our state. And that's one of the reasons I'm running. Actually, the main reason I'm running is I think we need balance in our state. I think we need to have voices from both sides getting together. I like it. I always refer to the 2011 session where I was in the House and it was half Democrats and half Republicans, and we had to work together. Anything too far afield was just fell off either end, and we had to work and we focused and it was great, and we got a lot done. Even though the Senate was still a Democratic majority, it had to pass our chamber too, and we had that balance, and I think that is just so important. I'm a mom and grandma and a business owner, and I just think it's so important that we start listening to each other again and not have more division. We don't need that. We need more unity. We need an economy where anybody can succeed if they want to. We need kids that educate and do their best for our kids. And we need to put safety back into public safety because I think it's been, we've just got a lot of problems, and I think we can put our heads together and fix them if we work on it. So that's really why I'm running. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Thatcher. Next, we have candidate Walsh. You also have 3 minutes, and your time starts now. And you are mute.
I listened to the instructions putting on mute. I didn't put it back on. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much, Joy, and thank you to the Urban League of Portland. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight and to introduce myself to everybody. As I am not a veteran, long-term career politician, I am looking to run for the first time to the Senate. I am engaged to a wonderful woman. I have 5 children. I'm an attorney that has been fighting for the underdog for the last 30 years. I basically practice representing injured Oregonians against insurance companies. I've been doing that for 30 years, and I've been fighting for the underdogs, really, in all walks of life. I've been representing thousands of clients. I've seen their pain. I've seen their lives. And I want to do more and more to help them. And that's one of the reasons I'm running. I'm also a small business owner. So when you're talking about balance, I've been representing workers, but I am also an employer. I've got 8 employees. I have a business in Salem. I deal with taxes. I deal with all the regular problems that the businesses go through. A small business owner fighting in the marketplace for share of business and to stay in practice. And I've been in practice for 30 years as a result of being successful in that. And I've been an Oregonian for my entire life, and I've been in the Salem District 11 for 25 some odd years, and I've been representing people on the city council. I've been on Kaiser City Council for 10 years, and I've been kind of known for pioneering and working on Kaiser Rapids Park, but actually I've worked on a lot of things, pioneered and worked on and championed and tried to help others get done various projects, including Kaiser Station, Recycle Program, River Road, Renaissance, Police Station, City Hall, Community Center, all kinds of things without raising any taxes, and that was important. And I took a break after a while, raised my kids, finished up. My last kid just graduated from high school, so now I'm ready to go in the Senate. I have more bandwidth. The reason I'm running is because of the issues. I see that I don't have a lot of time, so there's a lot of issues. I'm sure we'll talk about them, but they all kind of stem from the idea of sticking up for the underdog. The second reason is values, and I always want to do the best I can with what I have while I had it. And that means in high school doing Meals on Wheels, and it means now with all the experience I have running for the Senate. And I don't want to just talk about problems like I talked about. I don't want to talk about the problems. I want to get them done. And like all the projects I got done when I was a city councilor, I got them all done. I didn't just talk about them, I got them done. And then now that they're finished, I want to move on to other, even bigger, more important issues like trying to deal with the homeless issue and the health issues that we all face. I just have a few more seconds. So I want to say my third issue is I want to combat the hate and division that we have in this country. And I want to do my part to tilt the scale the other way.
Thank you so much, Candidate Walsh. Now we're gonna begin the question portion of the forum. We're going to do this in reverse alphabetical order and then alternate from there. So that means I'm going back to you. First question, we'll start with Candidate Walsh. So here's the question. The criminal justice system has historically been used as a Band-Aid for addressing mental health challenges. Aid and assist patients are patients who are charged but were not able to give a defense due to behavioral health conditions. Defendants who have not been convicted of a crime are often waiting over 40 days in jail before receiving adequate mental health care. My question to you, how can we resource and expand current mental health services in order to prevent the current criminal justice system from being the de facto mental health provider for our state?
Well, you make a very good point. Since we closed down some of our mental health facilities, I feel that we have failed our community. We have failed in terms of mental health. I think we are the lowest ranking state in the entire country in terms of supporting mental health for all of the people that need it here in the state. And it's no wonder that filters into things like homelessness and into the criminal system. And we don't do enough we do not do enough to take care of the people that are suffering from this. And I want to try to do something to try to change that. I think one thing that we can do kind of from the beginning is to get more people in the mental health field. And we can do that right from the beginning in the education system. That I've been endorsed by virtually every education union and group that in this election. And the reason is because I support them and I support the education system. We need to do more to get people to have additional education. Is that my 30 seconds? Or I'm sorry. What I would like to do is to have a program where people go to school and they're funded with scholarships by the state with a promise that they will go into the system and help. And I don't want to defund the police, but I do want to increase funding for the police. And some of that is for mental health counseling. And there's 40-day in jail stuff before they get a counselor is absolute terrible. And it's got to stop. And public defenders, oh my gosh, they're totally overwhelmed. And I see that they're overwhelmed in the system, and they also got to be more funded. What is happening in Salem, like I said, I haven't been there for 16 years, but it is just mind-boggling that all these things are falling apart. And I think a lot of it is the failure to get the money and the resources to fund these programs so that they're fully functioning and that we can actually take care of our people. And the most vulnerable among us, like I say, I'm the champion for the underdog, but I think the most vulnerable of us are the ones charged with crimes and those people that are homeless and those that are suffering from mental health and don't have the resources to protect themselves. And we need to do more. We need to do better.
Thank you so much. I will pass it to Senator Thatcher. Would you like me to repeat the question, or would you want to go for it?
I think I got it. It was a long question, but I think I got it. And what could we do to help improve mental health? That was the bottom line, right? Okay. I will say, I'll take that as a yes. Yes, Richard, candidate Walsh, mentioned that we rank very poorly in Oregon for providing mental health. And it is true. It has been not improved over the past decades, and we've got to do better. And part of that doing better might involve removing some of the bureaucratic red tape that gets in the way when there are people that want to come in and build beds for mental health capability. And when we're already at 100% capacity almost all the time for both mental health facilities and substance abuse, and the Oregon Health Authority will get in the way and say there needs to be a certificate of need. That's just a way to stand in front of facilities that want to build here. There was one that wanted to build in the district I represent now, which is up in Wilsonville. And of course, they redrew the district, and now I'm in District 11, and I'm happy about that. But there was an entity that wanted to build a mental health facility up in Wilsonville, and they were stopped by the Oregon Health Authority, even though we are at 100% capacity, and we are in desperate need of more beds. And there are facilities and places and programs that could be put in place, but for the denial of permits and the red tape that make everything more expensive, and the building of these facilities more expensive, and that will drive up the cost of taking care of the people that are on our streets and in severe need of mental health addressing their mental health issues that not only drive them to criminality, but can cause homelessness as well. So yeah, I think we can do better. And I think getting that red tape out of the way would go far in helping us get better in that regard.
Thank you very much. Thank you both for your thoughtful answers. I'm going to set the stage for our next question. We're going to go back to you, Senator Thatcher, for this one first. Setting the stage, an increasing number of people are unable to find safe and affordable housing. They resort to camping along dangerous roadways, for example. The Oregon Health Authority released data indicating that 1 in 5 houseless people are dying from unintended injuries. For scale, the national rate is 12 per 100,000, but in Oregon, that's approximately 253 per 100,000 people. Between Benton, Clinton, Lynn, Marion, Polk, Yamhill counties, 37 houseless people have died since the start of this year. My question to you first is, how do you intend to increase the number of affordable housing stock in Marion County so that those who are houseless have access to safe, accessible, and affordable housing?
Wow, thank you for that question. I actually was very surprised when I went out and visited some of the homeless camps and heard from so many people living there that they did not want housing. And I can't believe that to be true, because nobody grows up and says, hey, I want to live on the streets when I grow up. Nobody thinks that. I can't imagine anyway. So there are underlying issues, but there are many people who are out on the streets because of the unaffordability of the cost of living right now. And we've done a disservice in our state. We have an urban growth boundary line or boundary program, I should say, policies that have been set in place for over 50 years. And I think that plan needs to be adjusted and looked at to fill our needs now. It's kind of a self-imposed program or problem in that we have not built a sufficient amount of housing to meet our needs right now. It's a supply and demand issue. And there's so much that goes into the costs of building a home, even in one that's set aside to be an affordable housing home, even before the shovel hits the ground. And so the additional costs of legislation can add to the cost of affordable housing and make it less and less affordable. And that is really why I think we need balance, because we need to have transparency and accountability. There was a bill that everybody on the left side of the aisle voted against, and it would have made it so that there's an impact statement. So when the legislature passes a bill that has to do with housing or would affect the cost of housing, there would be an impact statement saying how much it would affect the costs of housing. And that really would be helpful, I think, in moving forward legislation that would be beneficial to everyone in Oregon. And it used to be, I mean, I lived in a trailer house when I was growing up. That was the affordable housing. It was what we could afford. And we moved it from one town clear across the United States and lived in another town. And right now they're building houses that are supposed to be, they're new, but they're supposed to be affordable. And they're not affordable for the builders to build because there's so much cost that goes into them. And then there has to be more government subsidization. They have to add money to it to make it worthwhile. I'm not saying the word very well. Anyway, so that's why we need to have more transparency in how what we do in the legislature would impact the cost of housing, so we can help people. It's just ridiculous what's happening, and it's a lot of people are out on the street because of that.
Thank you so much for your thoughtful response. I am going to pass it to candidate Wash for the same question. Please let me know if you need me to repeat it. And you're mute again, I'm sorry.
I'm still not used to all this Zoom stuff, but okay. I think I understand the question. Basically, it's the homelessness and affordable housing question, right? So I see that as two questions: homelessness and affordable housing, although they are very much interrelated. I think the most important thing to do at the very beginning is to, kind of a Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We need to deal with the people that are on the street. Now, there's many reasons for people being homeless. There are people are homeless because of health reasons. I see a lot of people that get injured in car accidents and then they lose their job and all of a sudden now they're homeless. I see people that are homeless because they're otherwise ill. I see people homeless and they're not old enough to get Social Security or whatever. I see homeless because quite frankly, they're alcoholics, or because they have drug problems, or because they have a criminal history and nobody will let them rent their home. There's all kinds of reasons. And some of them, quite frankly, are there because they want to be there. There's a ton of reasons why people are homeless. And so there is no one magic bullet to fix everything. But there are things we can do right now to fix a great deal of the problem that we're having. One of them is the micro shelters that I have been involved. I have been advocating for micro shelters since 2019. I wasn't on the city council. I wasn't on the Senate at the time, but I just saw this tremendous opportunity that we could have micro shelters to get people off the street and into a little shelter. Just get them out of the rain. Oh my gosh, I felt so bad. These people were getting poured on, and I don't care what they did. I don't care if it was a wounded animal. I wouldn't want them to be out in that weather in that terrible situation. People deserve dignity, and they deserve to be treated like people. They need to be treated with dignity and respect. And so let's just get them where they're not being rained on, not being frozen, and where they can have their significant other with them, and where they can have their pet with them necessarily. So I've been advocating for this since 2019. I have been a member of the Church at the Park Advisory Council. I have supported them financially. I have supported them with advocacy. I have advocated with Chris Hoy with the bill that we passed so that we can have more micro shelters in the city, in the state lands and that sort of thing. So I think that that's the immediate thing. We get people out of the doorways, out of the parks, out of the right of ways, and into these micro shelters. And they're being watched 24/7. They're being supervised, and they can take, and it's working. These people, we've had over 200 people rehoused already, and it's only been into permanent housing, and it's only been in effect for a little over a year. So it's phenomenal success for the short-term immediate need. Now, as far as the long-term, we need more affordable housing. And I got all kinds of ideas. Like I said, I haven't been in the Senate yet, but I'd love to try some ideas of real affordable housing. Affordable housing needs to be inexpensive. We can do it one of two ways: either affordable housing, because there's a really unaffordable housing that we supplement every month with a whole bunch of tax money with Section 8, or we can actually have affordable housing, like tiny homes that can buy why can't they buy the little piece of land that the tiny home sits on so they don't have to pay a landlord? Same thing with motor homes. Why don't we have people easier to buy their own apartments? I get all these ideas from George Bailey, really, with the Bailey building and loan. I don't know if I'm referencing anything anybody remembers, but with It's a Wonderful Life, he knew that all you really needed was a decent home, a couple of bathroom, a couple of baths and a bath, and then people they can move forward. They can start to build generational wealth. We can do things differently, and it doesn't take much land, and it doesn't take many resources. Anyway,
I apologize to cut you off. I want to also thank you for your thoughtful response on that question. I actually am going to go to you next for the next question. But again, thank you both for chiming in on that last one. So let me set the stage for you again.
Okay.
So language access is crucial for people of all walks of life to have access to information equitably. Community organizations such as Pueblo Unido PDX points to needs for Indigenous language interpretations and underscored how they are not adequately compensated or are unable to provide the needed services due to prudential barriers. My question to you first is, how would you support investing in Indigenous language interpretation and develop proficiency evaluation mechanisms to expand Indigenous language access? Why or why not?
So absolutely would support interpretation for all languages. I'm an attorney. My practice is advocating for other people. I tried learning a little bit of Spanish in order to communicate with people. And I realized that I was doing a disservice, because I would mispronounce things. I wouldn't get the legal concepts over. I wouldn't do the subtleties quite right. And because of that, there was an injustice being done. And so I stopped that altogether. And now I make sure that I hire very proficient interpreters that are very fluent in the language that they speak in my practice, in my law practice. I can't imagine going into a court or even understanding a claim without having the language of the person fully interpreted by someone who is very, very proficient in doing that and able to do the subtleties. Because like in law and in medicine especially, and in the criminal justice system, it's very important that the nuances are conveyed, that the information is conveyed in a real way that is really understandable both ways. And so, yes, I can't imagine anything happening. We need, you talk about mental health. We have a huge crisis with mental health being, having enough culturally adequate mental health counselors in the languages that the people speak that are being treated. Can you imagine being counseled by someone speaking a language that you don't even understand? Can you imagine trying to spend the frustration that you'll feel trying to explain your situation to a lawyer or a counselor or a mental health person or a judge, without the proper interpretation? I feel very strongly about this, that we need to serve our people and in all these areas in our society. And we can't do that if we don't understand each other. And so interpretive services, I guess in a nutshell, I would be just extremely supportive. And I would support those programs 100%.
Thank you so much for your response. I'm now going to pass it to Senator Thatcher. Same question.
So I heard a lot of emphasis on indigenous languages, but yes, I agree that we need to communicate well, especially I have a friend who is a interpreter for medical situations for both deaf and in another language. So you have to be able to communicate correctly. And so it is important to make sure that you have a qualified person who understands that language. So you do need to have some sort of clearinghouse or ability to test that person and make sure that they do indeed know American Sign Language, or they know the indigenous language, or they know Spanish or Russian or whatever of the other hundreds. I don't know how many, there's a lot of languages spoken in the state. And how we're doing it now, I'm not real familiar with how we're doing it now, but it is important that we continue to have that available, especially in places where it's very sensitive, like a court or at the doctor's office or at a counseling session, just like was mentioned. There's just so many legal ramifications that I can't even imagine could be at stake if people don't understand each other. So you have to have a qualified person. And so, that's just an obvious, to me, thing that we need to support in the state.
Thank you so much for your thoughtful response as well. I'm going to go to the next question, which actually starts with you again. So let me set the stage. So Oregon is experiencing the effects of climate change at a rapid pace. According to the National Weather Service, this July and August is tied with last year as the highest temperature in Salem. This summer, Pacific Power has shut off power for residents in Marion County due to the threat of wildfires. My question to you, Senator, how do you intend to ensure public policy is equitable, climate conscious, and effective for the public? Efficient for the public, I'm sorry.
Efficient for the public, is that what you said? Okay, all right. Well, that was interesting, having places in Portland at the coast that I know of. There was other places around the state that were lost their power. And I think that needs to be used judiciously. When you shut off power, especially in a rural area, you shut off their emergency services, you shut off their phone, you shut down their police station. I mean, there's a lot that's being shut down other than somebody's lights in their home or their ability to turn on their computer. So it needs to be done judiciously. And with that in mind, that it creates a hardship on people, and especially people that are of lower income and in rural areas where there's fewer services, I should say. And so when we're thinking about the wildfires, I don't know why it was so difficult to get the legislature to think about thinning our forests to help prevent a lot of these fires. We have lost track of our forests management. We shut down a lot of our forests to save the spotted owl. Instead, we're cooking the spotted owl now, because we're not managing the forest at all, and we're just letting them burn. And we've got to be sustainable in our practices so that we can prevent those things, have cleaner air. And when it comes to making sure that people are equitably dealt with, that would go for everything that has to do with power. And you need to have options for folks when they're not able to access their power. If they're shutting off the power in a heat wave, for instance, and people aren't able to cool themselves off, they need to be able to go somewhere to cool themselves off. They need to have an option. There needs to be things like that available. And when we want to have clean air, obviously, so we need to help stop the forest fires and manage them better. So I don't know if I can get to all the things I'm thinking along that line, but we need to be better stewards of our environment, and that includes especially in our forests, and not think about banning cars that people normally drive now in 2035. I think that would be hard on folks unless we get something else in place. What they're doing in California right now is creating a fair amount of difficulty for people, especially with low income, that can't afford an electric car. So we just need to be careful when we're rolling out policies to support fighting greenhouse gases or climate change, and make sure that it makes sense and that it's not hitting a population particularly hard.
Thank you very much for your answer. I'm going to ask candidate Walsh to unmute and answer the same question for 3 minutes.
Can I get a quick recap of the question?
Oh, of course you can. How do you intend to ensure public policy is equitable, climate conscious, and efficient for the public?
Okay, so you start by recognizing what the problems are. And I think you need to recognize, first of all, the climate change is real. And that it is not just a matter of increasing our temperature by 1 or 2 degrees. And gee, that's nice. I go down to Southern California and get warm all the time. What's the problem? That is not the issue. When you have climate change like we're having now, it creates the kind of hurricanes that we just saw just right now. It creates disease. It creates the transmission of insects into northern areas. It creates famine in entire countries, and marginalized countries are just wiped out in terms of their agricultural productivity, which leads the population to flood the urban areas, which leads to war, which I think we've seen in a couple of countries. We can go into various examples. It creates the refugee crisis. This climate thing is not just about a couple of degrees. It is a big deal. And you have to kind of keep that in mind and realize that the culprit there is really greenhouse gases. And I'm not going to say that everything's caused by man. I'm not going there. The Earth does have its own fluctuations, but science tells us that there's been a tremendous increase in carbon dioxide accumulation in the environment since the industrial age began. And we know that is one of the major culprits. And it's not just carbon dioxide, it's also methane and other things. So there's so much we can do to do our share. We're not going to fix the whole thing by ourselves, but we can certainly do our share to try to help the climate crisis. And one of those things we can do is to put some kind of a cost, some kind of a price on carbon emissions. Right now, you can just blow out all the carbon emissions you want. I'm overgeneralizing, but as a general rule, you can blow out all the carbon emissions at virtually no cost. Well, who pays the cost? The cost is paid by society. It's paid by lung cancer. It's paid by we used to have a situation with the ozone. We fixed that because we all got together and worked at it. And we can do the same thing with carbon. So one way to do that is have some kind of cost to carbon. It doesn't have to be cap and trade. It can be something else, but some kind of a cost that can then kind of redirect our energies into a green environment. Now, not right away, not immediately. I don't expect to have things fixed immediately. I don't want to cut everything off immediately. There'll be tremendous hardship if that happened, but we should always keep our eye on the goalpost that we want to transition to renewable energies, clean renewable energies. And we can do that. There's all kinds of things we can do, but we, in terms of the forest and all the management and how we get there and what industries we can have, we can let science guide us in those directions. And I would be a big advocate of letting science guide us and whatever that is. And of course, we have to pay attention to business needs and as well as communities. And I'm seeing that I'm running out of time, so I'll try to wrap it up. But there is so much more we can do that has been done, and I'd like to have a shot at it.
Thank you so much for your response. I'm going to ask that you stay off mute for this next question. It's going to you first. So let me set the stage. Salem is poised to propose Measure 24474, a $300 million bond this November, which is intended to support investments in street updates, sidewalk construction and repair, parks, earthquake safety, technology and cybersecurity, constructing 2 new fire stations, 2 new branch libraries, and an affordable housing opportunity fund. My question to you is, do you support this public investment? And why not? Or why not?
Well, I do. And for all the reasons you just mentioned, you know, we need our streets fixed. We need our sidewalks fixed. Oh my gosh, I've been walking around campaigning, knocking on doors all through Salem area, Salem neighborhoods in the north, mostly in the North Salem area, in part of District 11, and also in other neighborhoods in Woodburn and Kaiser. But the sidewalks, especially in parts of Salem, need fixing. And it's not just an issue about sidewalks. It's an issue about mobility. It's an issue about, really, I think about the seniors that have their walkers. How in the world do they get from one spot to another without taking their life in their hands or breaking their bones or whatever? It is really needs to be addressed. And I'm a little bit embarrassed that it's just a Kaiser bond measure. I think that some of these issues that Kaiser is picking up the mantle on, you know, should really kind of be state issues as well, especially when you come to the affordable housing issue and things like that. I mean, this is something we can share the burden statewide, but that wasn't done last term or the time before. So Salem's got to deal with it. So I think it is a good investment in your community, in our community. I consider myself part of the Salem, Kaiser, Woodburn, Willamette Valley community. And I think it is a wonderful investment. Parks, again, it serves all people. It addresses things that people don't think about. Parks addresses income inequality and inflation. How does it do that? Well, I can't afford my club membership anymore, or I could never afford a club membership. Well, where do you go to have recreation and to have a decent quality of life? It's going to be the public parks. And as inflation starts to go up and housing costs go up and the houses get tighter together, we're going to need parks more than ever. And so putting an investment in that is fantastic. Fire stations, of course, you need that. And affordable housing, sidewalks. I forget all the different things that the bond measure does, but from what I've heard, it's a worthwhile investment, and I think that I would be supportive of it.
Thank you very much. I will pass it on to Senator Thatcher. Do you support this public investment? Why or why not?
I would not be voting on it simply because that wouldn't be on my ballot this time since it is a Salem issue. But generally, I am supportive of infrastructure updates, especially on our streets. People do not like driving on potholed streets, walking on sidewalks that they trip on, and they definitely want cybersecurity, I would imagine, and the tech upgrades. I'm not sure what all that is, but I'm sure it's something that the city of Salem has decided that they need. Parks, people love parks, but they also like to be able to use their parks. And that's why we need to have facilities for homeless people to go to that don't include our parks, that people can actually enjoy being in our parks and doing the things that people do in parks, walking their dogs and playing and just relaxing under a tree, all the things that our parks offer us. But so I am definitely for street updates and sidewalk improvements and things like that. But that's something that is for the Salem voters to decide on.
Thank you very much for your thoughtful response. We have time for one last question before we proceed on to our closing statements. I'm going to pass it back to Senator Thatcher for this one to start it off. And again, you know the deal. I'm going to set the stage for you a little bit. So here we go. Oregonians are being priced out of their homes. Without the added protection of eviction moratoriums, the rate of court evictions has significantly increased. The Oregon Law Center reported that in May, between 50 to 60% of evictions were due to non-payment of rent. Although there are rental protections for rental increases, Oregon's Office of Economic Analysis announced that beginning January 1, 2023, rent can increase by 14.6% due to skyrocketing inflation. My question to you, as a state senator, how would you strengthen eviction laws and increase rental protections to reduce further displacement of Marion County tenants?
Well, I think it set both landlords and tenants up for a difficult situation when the CDC said, hey, you don't have to pay your rent anymore. And that put people in a tough spot all around. And there were a lot of situations I was hearing about, in fact, currently going on, where the landlords are waiting forever and ever and ever to get payment, and they're not even getting full payment. And then there's the tenants who just decided not to pay, even though they have a good job. They're just buying TVs instead of paying their rent. So there's the ends of the problem. But I think it was intended to help those who were impacted by the shutdowns, the government's response to the pandemic, where they chose to shut down a lot of businesses, which put a lot of people out of work, which then made them not able to pay their rent. So what we need is to have affordable housing. I think the rent controls were well intentioned, but all it's done is now create a goal. Now, you just mentioned it's 14%. They can increase it. They're going to increase it that full 14% because they don't know what's going to happen next as landlords. And so that's what I picture is going to happen. So instead of keeping rents low and just raising them as they need to, since they're limited now, they're going to take that full leap and take that 14%. And that's not going to be great. It might not happen in every situation, obviously, but I think a lot of the bigger owners of houses around here will take that full leap because they don't want to gamble with their stockholders with not being able to make up that a deficit in the future if they can't. So I think, it goes back to our urban growth boundary line, updating that, just making it less expensive to build homes. We've kind of self-imposed a problem on ourselves. We've self-imposed in Oregon a housing shortage through our urban growth boundary policies and our land use policies. And we've created a false scarcity, which drives up costs. We drive it up also the costs with our no, it says time up, and I'm not sure that applies to me now. I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted. Okay, no, that's an old one. Okay, so we just have to make sure that we're not adding to the cost of living or the cost of housing, the rental housing, through our legislation, and making it more expensive to build these homes, making it more expensive to provide these homes, making it more expensive to be a landlord will actually decrease that that stock of rental housing and affordable housing. So, gosh, now I forgot the original part of the question, but basically eviction notices, if somebody is not paying their rent, I think most landlords want to work with, especially an individual that's having a difficult time. They don't want to have to go find a new renter. If they've been paying their bills and they're a good tenant, then they should they usually work with them. And my time's up. I'm sorry about that.
Thank you so much for your response and being mindful of time. I appreciate that. I'm going to pass it to candidate Walsh to unmute. And as state senator, how would you strengthen eviction laws and increase rental protections to reduce further displacement in Marion County of Marion County tenants?
Yeah, so I think as Kim mentioned, the real problem is housing affordability and this whole rental problem, the rent going up every year and going up by 14% probably this year and so on, and such a huge portion of our population being renters. And I think the real long-term solution here is to really encourage affordable home ownership. And right now, the median price of a home is $500,000. And it's crazy to think that an ordinary, state worker or an ordinary, worker, Oregonian, can afford such a thing. And so what they end up doing is renting. And then they're subject to all these problems with the eviction and the rate increases and all that stuff. So can you imagine a scenario where you had true affordable housing? Now, affordable housing is only going to be done in really one way. Like I said a little bit earlier, is that you can either supplement it with tax dollars constantly, and that's solve the problem, or you can have a situation where you can allow real affordable housing. Well, what is unaffordable housing? It's too much land, too many materials, or too much labor. That's what makes unaffordable housing. That's what the cost is. So how do you take care of that? You have less land, you have less labor, and you have less materials. Well, what is that? That's a tiny home. Okay, so you can buy these things for $30,000. You can buy the land that it fits on for $50,000. You can spend more. You can spend $150,000, $200,000, but you're not getting to $500,000. And so what this creates is a situation, if you would allow it, if the state government would allow it, where people could actually own a tiny home on a little piece of land, not like a mobile homes they have today where the landlord's still there and they still jack it up 14%, but you own that little tiny piece of land. We used to do that in the 1800s. There's lots all over the place that were that size. Why couldn't we have little communities like that so that real people, real Oregonians can afford to buy these homes? Now, no one's going to loan on that home. Well, maybe they would if we had a guaranteed homeowners program like what I had when I was trying to get a student loan. I was a 25-year-old kid trying to get a loan for $25,000. Who would do that? I didn't have the credit or the credibility or at the time I didn't have the work history, but the state stood up and said, we'll guarantee that loan. And then I got that loan. We could do the same thing with these tiny homes. We could do the same thing with apartments. Why can't we condominiumize more apartments so that a person could own the house they live in? And then no rate increases then. It's their home. They can own it like a condominium. The entire apartment complex can be like a condominium homeowners association. And they can have real ownership and they can really start to build on their wealth, and their children can then inherit wealth, and you can really break a lot of cycles. I think we can do a lot in that regard. I'd love to get started on it.
Thank you so much. I want to thank you both for your thoughtful responses this evening. We are at the part of our agenda where we're going to move into closing statements. We're going to do that in alphabetical order. So I'm going to start with Senator Thatcher to deliver her closing statements, and you'll have 3 minutes for that. And your time starts now.
All righty. Well, thank you. It was a pleasure to speak with you and on topics that I don't honestly dwell on a lot. And that's because we have a state that's full of people that have different ideas. We have different perspectives. And I love that we can get together and hear what some of those issues are and some of those ideas. I don't say that Republicans have all the good ideas. That is absolutely not true. But I think we have the best ideas when we pull people from all different perspectives and say, hey, have you thought about this? And it's like, well, no, I haven't. Let's include that. And that is, to me, inclusive lawmaking, and where we consider the outcomes for everyone, and we work together for a better Oregon. I love some of the ideas that Richard had brought up, and I think that's great about the tiny homes. I love it, and especially ownership, because when people are stuck in a trailer house and there's landlords still jacking up the price of the land underneath them, that's not swell. Not great at all. So I just think that it's behooves Oregonians to look at balance and have the balance that we need to bring everybody together and actually talk and not just roll over the top of other people that have a minority voice in the capital or even around the state. So that is why I'm running. And I'm, being a grandma and a mom and a business owner, I'm just you know, I don't have a big old college education. Looking at, you know, I never got my degree, but I really think that there are a lot of smart people that don't have their degree, and we can listen to what their suggestions are, listen to their ideas and perspectives, and think about like the language thing. I mean, it's not something I even thought about for a long time. And so I appreciate that being brought up. I appreciate the concerns about eviction being brought up, and the concerns about affordable housing. And, you know, that's of course been on my mind, but I just think that that's what makes our state great. We get together, we can figure things out. So anyway, go to kimthatcher.com to get more information.
Thank you so much. I'm going to pass it to candidate Walsh. You also have 3 minutes, and your time starts now once you unmute.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity for me to introduce myself to really Oregon and to you and the Urban League. And I guess what I want to say is that I believe I can make a difference. And I guess I understand my opponent has a lot of experience serving 16 years in the legislature. And I see there's value to that, absolutely. But I think there's also value in a fresh face with new ideas. And I think I can bring that to the legislature. I think that I can, you know, I'm looking for a chance to try. And I'm going to do the best I can, what I got, while I got it. And that's kind of the reason why I'm running in the first place. And that's what I want to keep doing. But I can't do it alone. I absolutely can't do it alone. So I need, you know, like-minded people that want to see improvements in Oregon. They want to see things change. They don't want the same old. They want something new. And so I have I got a lot of partners that are helping me do this. The first responders are supporting me. The AFF, the OSFFC, the Oregon State Firefighters, the Oregon State Police Association, the Oregon Nurses Association. I've been supported by the senior citizen groups, the Oregon State Council for Retired Citizen. I've been endorsed by the retail union. I've been endorsed by trade unions, the AFL-CIO, the IBEW, the Laborers International Union, the Iron Workers, I think, you know, UA and the Pacific Northwest Carpenters, the Plumbers and Steamfitters, also the Cocoon Union, all the education unions, I think, the American Federation of Teachers, the Oregon School Employee Association. They know I value education. The OEA, the Salem Kaiser Education Association, the Association of Salem Kaiser Education Support Professionals, and Stand for Children. I've been supported by the BIPOC and the LGBTQIA and women's rights groups, Planned Parenthood, Basic Rights of Oregon, and the governors of the Government Workers Union, SEIU, and ASCME, the American Federation of State and Federal Workers. Of course, I've been a lawyer for 30 years, advocating for the underdogs. So the OTLA is supporting me, the environmental groups, the OLCV, Oregon League of Conservation Voters, and Mothers and Caretakers, the Mothers Pack, and more. But I can't do it alone. And we can't even do it with all these people. The Republicans were just given $2 million by Phil Knight. And I think he's got a total of $7 million he's given total. I can't compete with that. I can only compete with people if they look into things, they spread the news to their neighbors, and they come to my website, they learn more about what I have to say, and join me in trying to make a difference. That's what I'm asking. I want my turn. And if you, with your help, we can really make a change. Thank you.
Thank you. We did it, y'all. As the Urban League's Marion County State Senate District 11 candidate forum comes to an end, I want to give a special thanks to our audience members who submitted questions, to our partners at LNS Captioning and Open Signal who are airing this Urban League forum. We want to thank the community partners who supported this event. Thank you again to candidates Senator Kim Thatcher and Richard Walsh for participating today. Please continue to stay well on this campaign trail. I want to extend my appreciation to our co-host as well, and the many community groups who uplift civic participation in the Black community. And audience, I would love to remind you, and I hope that you please remember that Urban League is a nonprofit organization that relies upon donations to be able to serve the community. You can learn more about Urban League's fantastic programs and powerful, powerful advocacy by visiting the website at ulpdx.org. If you're able, and I highly encourage you to, I invite you to donate. Your support is an investment in our Black community and our robust wraparound programming that empowers communities to change lives. Urban League is also hosting more events. We will be hosting a Multnomah County Chair Candidate Forum on October 10th. There will be a Circuit Court Judge District 2 and 3 Candidate Forum on October 13th. And then lastly, but not least, there will be a Small Business 101 virtual workshop on October 20th. Please visit ulpdx.org/get-involved to sign up and learn more about those amazing events. On behalf of the Urban League President, Nkinge Harmon Johnson, the Board of Directors, and all of the Urban League members, I thank our audience for participating today. If you're not an Urban League member, I welcome each and every one of you to join or renew your annual membership. I know I am. Visit the website again at ulpdx.org to join the movement for justice and equity in Oregon. Also, if you are in need of assistance while voting during this during this midterm election, or registering during the general, staff, so amazing staff at Urban League are ready to talk to you. You can visit the website, social media, or you can call for assistance. That number to call is 503-280-2600 for assistance, and someone can help you out. Whew. I'm just really thankful for everyone who made this work possible. Again, my name is Joy Elise. I'm the president and executive director of Imagine Black, and I wish you all a good night, Oregon. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.